if you're explaining, you're losing. You explain stuff to people, it just doesn't get through. If you talk for longer than 6 seconds, the other side's going to ask themselves, is this guy wasting my time?
My guest today is Voss, the author of Never Split the Difference. He has negotiated with terrorists, kidnappers, and criminals where the stakes were life or death. But today, he's going to show you why those secrets are the key to winning your next business deal, fixing your relationships, and why my own elevator pitch to an investor was a total disaster until Chris told me why. What's the most common misunderstanding people have about negotiation?
That you got to explain your position. Ronald Reagan, just the one I quoted, if you're explaining, you're losing. But a lot of people have said that. I'm not sure that Reagan was the first one. You explain stuff to people, it just doesn't get through. And it's just, whether it's a business negotiation, whether or not you're talking to somebody from Al-Qaeda. Like the reason somebody's adversarial in the first place, because they're tired of being explained at. And people just don't like being explained to. So, but everybody says, hey, gotta make a case, in business. What's your value proposition? What's your elevator speech? All that stuff. You got to throw that out there. You get the time for it, just not starting off first.
So you're saying I should not explain my position?
Not before they're ready to hear you. Oh. And so your question is interesting because when you sit down, you're dying to explain your position, which means you're not in a position to listen. So the other side, again, could be somebody from Al-Qaeda. Doesn't matter. They're human. So they're dying to explain their position too, which means nobody's really listening to start off with. So if I start off by listening to you, you just human. I want to make a point. I'm like, all right, you go first. And if I make you feel heard, then there's something else innate in humans. Again, doesn't matter what your political persuasion is, reciprocity. If you feel heard, then you're usually willing to hear the other side out. So it's just a sequencing issue.
So the first step in negotiation is actually shutting up and actually listening.
And maybe prompting letting the other side know that you want to talk. And say, all right, so it seems to me this is what your position is. If you say that, only one of two things that are possibly going to happen. I get it right. If I got it right, you're going to say that's right, and you're going to feel great. When the feeling of being heard is phenomenal. If I don't get it right, which actually to some degree I might try to get something wrong on purpose, you'll correct me. Now, again, that makes you feel good. People love to correct. You're going to feel like you're mentoring me. And if you're correcting me, if you feel like you're mentoring me, automatically we're no longer adversaries. You're my mentor. So in kind of a sneaky way, I've taken me out of an adversarial position by getting you to correct me. Now, the third kicker, which is really cool, is when people correct, they tell the truth. And they'll tell you stuff that they didn't mean to tell you, but it feels so good to correct. And there's an old saying, people don't remember what was said in the moment, they remember how they felt. I'm going to want you to tell me stuff you shouldn't tell me. I don't need you to regret it. So if it felt great when you told me, you'll never regret it.
So in a negotiation, political negotiation, or hostage negotiation, which matter most, logic or emotions?
Logic is what we make up after our emotional brain has decided. You make decisions based on what you care about. Your logic is based on premises of what you value. Those words are by definition emotional.
Why do most professionals still over-index on logic then?
Because it seems logical to you. And it's this is going to sound harsh. And I was thinking about this. There's certain phrases, it's so self-stimulating to come up with a logical argument that the other side has to give in to. And it's an ego trip. I'm going to come up with this brilliant logical argument. It feels so good to you. The other side feels talked down to.
God, I'm guilty of all of these.
Yeah, you're human. I mean, we all are. We all are, and there's a lot of academic guidance. Like when I still find it amusing that I went to Harvard. The fact that I got into Harvard, but anyway, they were heavy then into at the business school and the school of government. I went to the school of government, teaching people how to make the elevator speech, how to make the value proposition, how to get your point across even faster, quicker. That ain't about listening to anybody. And there's such an academic emphasis on the educational institutions globally. Be articulate and explain your position. And some people then think you got to add syllables. The more syllables, the more eloquent I must be. And the other side falls asleep on you.
So today I met 2 investors I've been dying to meet for the past 1 year. And I got starstruck and I did not listen. And my pitch was horrible. I vomited words.
Yeah,
I embarrassed myself. What is the best way to do the elevator pitch or to pitch your ideas?
Getting the other side ready to hear you is what first clouds somebody's head. At some point in time, if you talk for longer than 6 seconds, the other side's going to ask themselves, is this guy wasting my time? So to get out in front of that, you say, look, at some point in time, when I'm talking, you're going to ask yourself if you're wasting your time. You're going to ask yourself why you're even listening to me. You're going to ask yourself if I understand anything about you at all. Now, what I just laid out there was what we've termed the Accusations Audit. And it's academically, I'm gonna do an audit of the potential negative thoughts you might have, not I might have, that you might have. And the crazy thing about emotional intelligence is, you can't plant an emotion. You can't plant the positive. You can't plant the negative. So if I call out a negative in advance, it won't put it in your head. And then the kicker is it'll actually inoculate you from experiencing that. It's very much like when a doctor says, the doctor's getting ready to give you a shot. He's going to say, it's going to hurt. And he hits you with the needle. And you'll be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Now, if the doctor says to you, I don't want you to think this is going to hurt, and he hits you with the needle, you're like, Doc, come on, what are you talking about? That hurt. Or if the doctor, with no warning, jabs you with a needle, then you're mad because you didn't get warned. Physical pain, emotional pain, people are incredibly resilient if warned. So, I kind of learned this the hard way a long time ago when I was working kidnappings for the Bureau internationally. American gets kidnapped someplace. I show up. I'm the expert from headquarters. No expert from headquarters is ever welcomed with open arms anywhere on earth. Whether you're a corporate division, guy shows up from headquarters. Whether you're in the government, guy shows up from headquarters. Your instinctive reaction to that is, this guy's here to tell us we're screwing up. And as an expert, my thought is, you should be happy I'm here. I'm here to help. That is never the way it's received. And of course, there would be nuances that they wouldn't understand. So I'd show up in the embassy and I'd start laying strategy out for them. They get offended every time. And I learned, before I started laying out the strategy, if I say in advance, it's going to sound harsh. Now, I haven't opened up my mouth yet. So most people think this is a potential of planting a negative. Because I haven't said anything that's harsh. But if I say it's going to sound harsh, and then I start laying the same guidance out, they'd be like, okay, that wasn't harsh at all. So it's kind of crazy how resilient people are if you warn them.
So the mistake that I did is I saw the investor coming out from the bathroom and I said hi, shook his hand, and blurted out. I should have told you, hey, 20 seconds. I want to invest and pitch you this idea.
All right, so we'll go back over it because everybody makes this mistake. So I'll prep you for next time. You're coming out of the bathroom.
Sure.
And somebody ambushes you.
They felt so awkward.
How does that feel?
It feels horrible.
Right. So when you walk up, you tell them how they're going to feel. Right now, you're probably going to feel ambushed.
Oh, okay.
And then I go like, oh, okay. I'm at I've had the good fortune to cross paths with most of the sharks on Shark Tank. And to a person, they've all been generous. Robert Herjavec, generous dude. Mark Cuban, Kevin O'Leary. I haven't been in person with the two ladies, Barbara Corcoran. I was on a virtual podcast with her one time on something called Clubhouse. Lori Grenier, by the way, she's a phenomenal negotiator, one of the best voices on planet Earth. She got this smile and a late night FM DJ down simultaneously. She has told the other sharks, the males in particular, on several occasions, the equivalent of shut the F up while I talk. But she says it's so nice that they shut up. She's got the best voice on earth. Anyway, Kevin O'Leary, he and I are both talking at this small CNBC event a couple years before the pandemic. Green room is up at the top of the steps. He's up in the green room. I'm at the bottom of the steps. I see Kevin O'Leary getting ready to come down the stairs. And he sees me waiting at the stairs, at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't know who the hell I am. I'm just some schmuck, right? And I can see him just gathering himself because he's got a stalker waiting for him at the bottom of the steps. And the last thing he wants to do is talk to some stalker. That's me. So I ask him an unwarranted question. I go, would it offend you if I ask you a question? Because I dropped in the emotional, he's going to feel offended. You know, I saw him up there gathering himself, going like, God, what is this guy going to ask me? So I got to disarm him when he gets to the bottom of the steps. I go, would it offend you if I ask you a question? He's like, no. And he's talkative. And then he gets up and he gives his talk. And then I have the advantage of I'm talking after him. And I go, here's what I did to Kevin O'Leary not 15 minutes ago. By the way, he took a bunch of us to dinner later that night. He paid for everything. Generous dude. Very, very generous and absolute gentleman.
He comes here to Abu Dhabi a lot. Yeah, we love Kevin O'Leary here. So noted, this is for next time. Because what I did is I just ambushed him and I told him my pitch, and he was even trying to walk and was trying to gather himself. It was very awkward and I was starstruck. Lesson learned.
Well, yeah, you're human. I mean, that's cool. Everybody makes mistakes.
Was there a single negotiation early in your FBI career that completely changed your approach for human behavior?
I learned a lot at different times. I'm not sure that it changed my approach for different behavior. I had a kidnapping and worked in the Philippines, a Burnham Sombrero case that went bad. That thing was a train wreck across the board. Like it was everything went bad on that thing. And I failed to take into account the team on the other side. There's always a team on the other side. You could have a great relationship with the person you're talking to, but if you don't consider their team on their side, the deal could go bad. And through the course of that negotiation, I knew the relationship that had been established with the bad guy's negotiator was a great relationship. So much so that when they reneged on the deal, this dude was embarrassed. I mean, he was genuinely embarrassed. I mean, the conversations had gotten very casual. The spokesperson, however he come across the Burnhams in captivity, he knew about the kids. He knew about some of the favorite breakfasts that their kids like to eat, which indicated to me some actual compassion on the bad guy's part towards the hostages. And he had somebody on their team that betrayed the whole operation and just turned into a train wreck. And there were several things that happened in that case that taught me some big lessons. Number one, there's always a team on the other side. Doesn't matter how good your relationship is with your counterpart. If their team isn't on board, and you have to take that into account. The deal killers are more important than the decision makers. They're always different guys, generic term, that their formal decision-making process is not what their actual decision-making process is, whether it's a company or whether it's a band of kidnappers in a jungle. You got to find out how they make their decisions collectively as a group. It's never going to be along the stated hierarchy. So I learned about the team on the other side. And then actually in that case, among the crazy things that happened, in the middle of the case, we're told by a secret government agency that shall not be named that one of our hostages was picked up on a phone. Now, I'm fairly, there's still nuances that I hadn't learned. I'm like, who the hell is talking to one of our hostages on the phone? And why are they talking to our hostage on the phone? Because our hostages are not out there ordering pizzas. You know, they ain't calling Uber Eats to get something to eat. There's a purpose for this. And I got back to my boss and I said, you know, we got an over here. And he's like, somebody's getting proof of life on our hostage. The only reason a hostage is on the phone is to give proof of life. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm not sure which blows my mind more. The fact that somebody else is getting proof of life, which means there's another buyer in play. You're getting proof of life because you want to ransom out the hostages. So who the hell is out there looking to buy our hostages? That made no sense. Turns out to be a corrupt politician after the fact, we find out. And then, how do they get them on the phone? I never got anybody on the phone. How they getting them on the phone? And kidnapping in Pittsburgh, probably about a year and a half later, drug dealer on drug dealer kidnapping. One drug dealer grabs another drug dealer's girlfriend. Drug dealer victim goes to the FBI because who do you go to when you got a kidnapping? Even if you're a bad guy, you go to the FBI. And a hostage negotiators are riding around in a car with the drug dealer victim. And he says on his own, uncoached, hey, dog, how do I know my girlfriend's alive? And the tone of the kidnapper changes immediately. He goes, well, I'll put her on the phone. And that's a defensive tone. In the moment, the upper hand in the negotiation shifted 180 degrees. And I remember, number one, he volunteered to put her on the phone. And I remember thinking, like, that's what happened in the Philippines. They just asked the obvious question. And the power of the obvious question is ridiculous. Because if you and I are talking about something, doesn't matter who you are, I'm allowed to ask obvious questions as long as I'm not being disrespectful. And there's, in all negotiations, there's great power in deference. Like, if you can say something deferentially, you could say almost anything to anybody. It's shocking what you can get away with by being deferential. And so you're a terrorist kidnapper and supposedly have all the leverage, or you're a business and supposedly have all the leverage. I still get to ask fair, honest questions. And how am I supposed to do that? How do I know the hostage is alive? It's a fair question. The other side's says to themselves, you know what? That's a legitimate question. And you ask me respectfully.
I used to have a very talented designer. I'm going to send her this video. She used to, when she wanted to take a holiday or vacation, she used to send me a no question. Would you oppose to me? And after a month, like, Mahmoud, I Chris Vossed you. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? I was like, Mahmoud, read this book. And how did you come up with this question? Would you oppose to this, prompting the other side to say no?
It was staring at me in the face for a really long time, and I finally put the pieces together. It really started from Jim Camp's book in 2002 called Start With No. And I'm working kidnappings at the time, and I'm always checking bookstores and airports because I've always loved to read. You know, I love ideas. Usually I got like 5 books I'm reading at the same time. And I see the cover of this book in a bookstore. It says Start With No. And I remember thinking, like, Start With No? I thought you were supposed to get the yes. And so I go over and I start leafing through the book, and if I find one idea in a book, if I've leafed through it in a bookstore, I'll buy it. I might not find one idea, and it's going to be worth the price of the book. And Camp believed that you just free people to say no. And he used to say, you could tell me no at any point in time and I'll go away. And people would be more agreeable. And he called that preserving their autonomy or their right to veto. He called it preserving their right to veto. And he said in his book, people will die to preserve their autonomy, which is true. Your autonomy is more important to you than survival. You'd rather die than be a slave. And throughout the history of mankind, any people, any civilization anywhere has been put into slavery, they've all been happy to risk death to get out of it. Now, there's stories, biblical stories, religious stories across the board, or people risking death to get out of slavery. So autonomy is more important than survival. Camp wrote that in his book. And so one of my hostage negotiators inadvertently asked a boss who was really upset with her a no-oriented question, because I'm telling her about this book, and she says, is this what I did? And she asked her supervisor, who was going to do something that was going to embarrass the office but put her in her place, and bureaucratic administrator, what we would call insecure person. He didn't care. And she says to him, do you want the FBI to be embarrassed? Now, that to me at the time seemed like such an obvious manipulation that this guy's going to blow up. And he doesn't blow up. He just goes, no. And now she's got the upper hand of the negotiation, and she ends up keeping everything that she wanted, and the stuff that he was threatening to take away from her, he let her keep. Because she asked him the no-oriented question, he just wanted to feel powerful. And I remember at the time thinking there was a lieutenant on the police department who I didn't think was a very good leader. And he told me one time, he says, Chris, the lieutenant's job is to say no. And I remember thinking, like, what a horrible leader you are. What a horrible manager. But saying no makes you feel in control. And I thought, that's got to work across the board. And then I remembered Marty asking this guy, do you want the FBI to be embarrassed? Saying no. And so we started to experiment with what happens when you get people to say no. And people love to say no. As stupid as it is, if you just change your questions. Across the board. Doesn't matter what country. China, everywhere in Asia, throughout the Middle East, Western Europe, South America, you pick the country. You get somebody to say no, and if they're not rejecting you, if in point of fact the no is crafted so that they're opening themselves up to you, like, is this a ridiculous idea? Would it be ridiculous? Are you opposed? They feel good about saying no, and they're not rejecting you, so they're moving forward with you. So it's one of the more powerful things that we teach people.
And you practice what you preach. I've been conversing with your team for about 6 months now. And Sam, shout out to Sam. He was like, every time you want to change the date or the time, like, Mahmoud, would you oppose to changing the date? This does sound like a ridiculous idea. I was like, dude, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Early in the conversation, you mentioned that negotiation is more about emotion. What emotions people are most blind to in high-stake conversations?
Well, the fear of losing their autonomy is probably the first thing. The autonomy affiliation, but autonomy is first. And then, depending upon the circumstances, more people make decisions to avoid getting fired than getting promoted. People are worried about losing their jobs. There's a book out there, I think it's called Jolt, and the overall contention of it was, in all negotiations, your biggest adversary is the status quo, because they're more likely to do nothing, because people are fired faster for mistakes of commission than omission, which means you're more likely to get fired by doing something overtly wrong than by failing to make a decision. Now, if you fail to make a decision, ultimately they're going to show you the door, but not today. And so people are really worried about getting fired secondarily. They're worried about losing their jobs. And those are probably the biggest things, wasting their time. So mostly negative stuff, because human beings are wired to be, our default wiring is negative. Survival mode is negativity. The negative caveman survived. The optimistic caveman got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Oh, little kitty, I can pet it. No, it's going to eat you.
If I can take 3 things from this conversation to make me a better negotiator tomorrow, either a founder, a product leader, or like a young and upcoming politician, what are the 3 things I can start doing tomorrow to make me a better negotiator?
Well, the first thing, be a little playful.
Okay.
Just a little, not a lot. You're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. Emotions are contagious for neurochemical reasons. And I make that distinction because psychology is a soft science. Neuroscience is much more of a hard science. If I smile at you, if you hear a smile in my voice, it'll trigger a chemical change in your brain that'll put you in a better mood. Now, you might fight it. And I do this on a regular basis when we train negotiations all the time. And I'll look at somebody who's got a great big giant frown on their face that we're training, and I'll smile at them. And you can see them fighting back the smile. And I'll say, look, I started it in your brain. Now, you're not smiling now because you're fighting it off. But emotions are contagious for neurochemical reasons. It's an involuntary response. So if you're a little bit playful with somebody, and the accusations audit playfully is self-effacing humor. You say, you know what, you're going to think I'm the biggest idiot you ever met. And you say it like that, people loosen up. And you're less of a threat. So, if it's possible to try to be a little playful, self-effacing humor to start off with, is a great way to start off with people. Then make sure they feel heard first. After you make them feel heard, go silent. Now, there's a really good chance that they're going to say something to step in your direction in the negotiation in that moment of silence. If you don't shut up, you've blown that moment. You've missed that opportunity. Let's say you make them feel heard and they haven't moved on their position, not an inch. Extremely unlikely, but possible. In that silence, you now find out how firm they are. It's a diagnostic moment. So if I make you feel heard to start off with, and then I wait, your response is going to give me the diagnosis of where we are actually. Are your positions written in stone, or are you flexible? In that moment of silence, I'm going to find out.
And you mentioned how to weaponize your own name.
Our name is a precious commodity to us, and it gets weaponized against us all the time. And some of the smooth, slick salespeople, like I'll meet them, and in the first minute, they've used my name 5 times. And I'm like, all right, I can't trust you.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. Anybody that starts hammering me with my name over and over and over again, my guard is up immediately.
I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I thought this is what you're supposed to do, no?
Not that's what people overdo it.
Okay.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get you to give me your name. So I'll say I'm Chris.
Okay.
Now, in the moment that follows is a diagnostic. Number one, I've just become more of a person to you. So you're, no matter what, and I've been this close to fights in bars several times. I was this close to a fight on an airplane not that long ago. And I looked at the guy and I said, I'm sorry, I'm Chris. And he was like, I don't want to meet you. And he turned around and walked away. Now he's getting ready to hit me. And when I introduce myself, it's over. He turns around and walks away. I'm harder to hurt if I'm Chris. Now, in that moment, what's the chance that you're going to give me your name voluntarily? I didn't pry it out of you. You gave it up voluntarily, and that's what I'm looking for. And now I can use your name because you gave it to me in reciprocity.
I have heard you several times talk about labeling. What does simply naming an emotion disarm people?
Yeah, that's a great question because most people are afraid of it. This is one of the few things that there's neuroscience behind. They put people in EEGs. I can't remember if that's the right terminology, but it's a device. It's like a big helmet, and it tracks your brain activity. And then they showed them pictures which were designed to induce negative thoughts. I don't know what the pictures were. You know, it could have been a puppy in the rain. I don't know. And then they would watch the parts of the brain that are associated with negative emotions light up. And even though it's a little bit different in everybody's brain, it's roughly the same areas across the board. It's around the amygdala, hippocampus. They know roughly where it's going to light up. And then they simply said to people, name the emotion you're feeling. Label it. And every time the person simply named it or became aware of it, then the negative emotion diminished every single time. Now, the amount that it varies situation to situation. That's where it's imprecise. So somebody may have a negative emotion that I may need to label to make you more aware of. Sometimes I label it once and it goes away with one label. Other times I got to label it 3-4 times and then it'll go away. But the science is clear. Simply putting a name on a negative emotion diminishes that negative emotion every time. You can self-label, or I could say, you look like you're upset. Or my son, Brandon, brilliant negotiator, this guy was trying to make an example of him in an exercise one time, which was ridiculous. But it was so clear that this guy was trying to talk down to my son and put him down. Brandon says to him, clearly I've offended you. And instantly the guy changed his attitude. So calling it out diminishes it, inoculates it. Negatives. Calling out a positive, it's like the opposite side of a magnet. Calling out a positive reinforces it. And that's what scares people. They think calling out a negative will reinforce it, when in fact denying the negative reinforces it. If I say to you, look, I don't want you to think I'm being disrespectful, you're going to be like, all right, this is going to be disrespectful. Aha, you denied it, and now you even matter. But if I were to say to you instead, this is going to sound disrespectful, you'd be like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
And self-labeling, let's say if someone cut me off or someone rejected me, can I self-label it and I will feel better, or no, it doesn't work this way?
No, it does. And I do that with myself on a regular basis. Any negative emotion is probably pretty close: concern, worry, apprehension. The vast majority of those emotions are fear in disguise. Fear wearing a different mask. And I'm highly acute to that, and I got fears because I'm human. And what I'll do, if I'm concerned about the future, I'll say to myself, and this is literally how it goes, the internal monologue. I'll be like, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. Screw it, I'm not scared anymore. So I self-label on a regular basis.
I've done that so much time today. How can I negotiate with my team without manipulating them?
Where are you taking them? The difference between influence and manipulation is where you're taking somebody. If I compliment you genuinely, and I mean it, that's influence. I'm trying to make you feel better as a human being. A lot of the con artists compliment us to get us to change our mind. Oh, you're great. You're absolutely great. Well, you're trying to get me to do something I don't want to do. Or you're trying to get me to be on your side when I shouldn't be on your side. That's what we hate about sycophants. In point of fact, the sycophant is not trying to work with somebody, the flatterer. They're trying to avoid working with people, and they're going to get away by all this flattery and then not do their job. And everybody hates them because they hear this flattery all the time, with nobody walks the talk, if you will. And so your original question is really the difference between manipulation and influence. And manipulation is, I'm trying to get you to go someplace, get you to do something that if you knew I was taking you there, you wouldn't do it.
When should I walk away, even if the deal looks objectively good?
Yeah. How much friction? And are you being hustled in the first place? So there's a phrase, it's not a sin to not get the deal. It's a sin to take a long time to not get the deal. There are indicators when you're being played. It's also a sin to take a long time to get a bad deal. And so if you've been combative, if you've been difficult, my friend Joe Polish has an acronym called H.A.L.F, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. If dealing with you has been hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, if you make up excuses, if you're late, if you pretend that assurances you made previously that you never made at all the different things that are hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, that's the way you're always going to be. And we ran some data in my company one time, because when I became acutely aware of the H.A.L.F, hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, I told my sales team, don't make those deals. And my sales team at the time, working for the Negotiator, you figure you got to make every deal. I go, no. We're going to walk away sooner from people that are a pain in the neck. And so before they did that, they started measuring how long it took to make the deal, and then measuring how long it took to implement the deal. They made the deals anyway with the H.A.L.Fs, the hard, annoying, lame, and frustratings. And this is the data that they gave me back after a year. They said, number one, it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 times as long to make and execute the deal. 2 to 5 times as long. So let's say it only takes twice as long. That means we just took a 50% cut in pay. Now, when is a 50% cut in pay possibly worth it? Maybe. If they're going to be a 20-year customer. None of the H.A.L.Fs repeated because they were so annoying that not only did we never want to do business with them again, they didn't want to do business with us. So you take a 50% cut in pay for somebody that's not going to repeat. You can't make a living doing that. And so as soon as we stop making those deals, the H.A.L.Fs, if you can picture a line of customers or a line of counterparts, there are people that want to do business with you in that line behind the H.A.L.Fs. And as soon as you get the H.A.L.Fs out of the way, the other people start to show up. Now, that's really hard for somebody just starting out. But any experienced business person that I've spoken to, if they got anywhere from 3 to 20 years of business experience, when you start talking about the H.A.L.Fs costing them money, and the clients that they should have fired, everybody goes, yeah, that would have saved me so much money if I just would have fired those clients sooner. And so if they're hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, don't make the deal.
Chris, I mean, we only touched the tip of the iceberg here. Where can our audience, if they want to know more about you, about negotiation skills? I mean, Never Split the Difference is one of the most popular book ever. And I implore you all to read the other book, Empathy, Understanding in Business. But where else can we go?
All right, so the best place, our website is blackswanltd.com, BLACKSWAN-LTD.com. Now, we have got something we just started probably about 10 months ago. I don't think we've had it for a year now, called the Black Swan Negotiation Community, which you could join for free. And you get a practice for free with people who are also in the community. Now, They're people, they're lawyers and they're practicing with each other. Most of the people that we train and we coach now join the community anyway because they want to get in a lot of practice on the side. So if you don't have the money to pay for our training, join the community, start to practice. You're going to make money. You're going to put yourself in a position where you can afford the training. If you are in a position to afford the training, they're perishable skills. You want to get in there and practice. I got one of my favorite people in there, Michael Pariente, who we've given a Global Negotiator Award to this year. We just started it this year for people doing phenomenal things in negotiations, business. Michael is in there twice a week with lawyers, practicing the skills. And he made so much of a difference in his business. Before the pandemic, he was worried about having to close his law firm. When I met him after the pandemic, he gave me a ride on a private jet to L.A. by using the skills. He went from being worried about going out of business to flying private. That's how much of a difference anybody can make in their life when they start to apply the skills. So if you can't afford to fly private now, join a community, and in 2 or 3 years, if you practice the skills, you'll probably be giving me a ride in your private plane.
Amazing. I'll include all this in the show notes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Mahmoud, a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me in.
That was absolutely insane. Let me check the ride really quick.